Don't just live for tomorrow, or just live in yesterday. Just be glad for all you have that's in today. And though you've come through many obstacles.
Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to my blind reaction to episode 1 of Miss Marvel. So, this is the MCU Disney Plus series that I've been waiting for the most. And honestly, it's the only one that I've been actively excited for prior to its release. Like, other ones I ended up enjoying a lot more as they were coming out and all, such as Falcon and Winter Soldier, or What If, or Moon Knight. But I didn't really, get excited for them ahead of time. Some I did, I was more anticipating than others, but just in general. And then there were some that I just was not interested in, and one that I still haven't seen, and probably won't. But this one, like I said, is the only one, really, that I have had this pre-release excitement for. And the reason is because I am a fan of the character of Miss Marvel. I have this Funko Pop here, as you can see, even. I've just always liked Kamala Khan. I like that she is, by her nature as a character, a fangirl. Like, she is a Avengers and especially Carol Danvers fangirl, and her entire thing is basically about becoming one of them after having known so much about them. It's kind of like Deku from My Hero Academia. And within this, you have some other interesting stuff going in. In the comics, her powers are basically physical manipulation. A lot of people think it's just stretchiness, but that's technically only one aspect of her powers. She can basically physically manipulate her body to do a number of things. I mean, stretching is one of the typical ways she does it. She can stretch her limbs, Mr. Fantastic style. She can grow her body and whatnot. But she can also do stuff like basically be a master of disguise. She can change her features to look like someone different and stuff. That's how her body works, basically. And there's a lot of other stuff as well. And in the comics, she got her powers as part of the Inhumans and everything, I believe. It was, God, I can't remember what it's called. But there's like this accident or incident or something where it caused a bunch of people to like suddenly get powers, and she was one of them. But in this Marvel series, they are changing things up a bit. And Kevin Feige explained why without actually saying anything. Basically, his explanation was the comics, the Miss Marvel comics came out at a certain time. The series is also coming out at a certain time. And we've had to change things because of that. That's basically his explanation. It doesn't actually amount to anything. It doesn't actually say anything. It doesn't actually like tell us like why he feels the need to do this. It's basically, like I said, he's telling us their reasoning without actually saying anything. But in this, anyways, her abilities seem to be more like, I guess you would compare to Green Lantern with energy constructs. Though in various bits of advertising, we have seen that she will use the powers, at least, excuse me, at least partially to a similar degree. There will be some moments that are more similar to her classic power sets and that are very reminiscent of that. And I think that's at least good. Um, but then we also have some other important stuff that they are going to be carrying over, such as the fact that Kamala Khan is Islamic, that she is a Muslim girl. Um, and the majority of what I've heard about like the story and the characters seem to be very accurate. Growing up in New Jersey and everything, and the fangirl part and all, like all of it seems to really be hitting the mark properly. The powers is the only really big change that I can notice right now. And to be fair, the MCU has changed a lot with a lot of these characters. Um, there was a lot different about Iron Man's portrayal, about Captain America and Bucky's portrayals, and so on and so forth. A lot of these characters are not the same as they were in the comics, believe it or not. And that doesn't make them bad. It just makes them different. And keep in mind, most of these characters have also changed drastically at various points in the comics. These characters have always been moldable. As long as you keep the same ideas and themes and certain traits correct, then you can shape them differently depending on the comics, depending on the adaptation, depending on all of that stuff. So the characters not being exactly the same every time is fine, and I'm willing to give it much more of a breathing room than some other people seem to be. I'm okay with her powers being changed as long as the character is still done well within the spirit of who Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan, is supposed to be. So that's my big view on this all. And I saw the trailer, the first trailer. I don't know if there was another one, probably, but I saw the first trailer. And I've seen other advertising. Actually, I think I saw a couple trailers. But either way, it's looking good. Like, this series is looking good right off the bat, so we're just going to have to see. And I've even heard good things from people who have read the pre-reviews. Or, not read the pre-reviews, seen the movie ahead of time and written the pre-reviews. I haven't obviously seen any spoilers necessarily, any big story spoilers or whatnot, but just like people sharing their general thoughts, and they've almost all been positive. In fact, I think all of the ones I've actually seen have been positive, which is a very good thing, because that's more than you can say for some of the other Disney Plus Marvel shows. So we're just going to get into this, and I mean, you could tell how excited for this I am by the fact that it's the only MCU show that I've actually reacted to instead of watching on my own time and just doing like a first impressions review. It's the only one I'm reacting to, and that's because of how excited I am for it and how much more into the source, I guess you could say, I am. And I'm not even like the biggest like fan. I know there's a lot bigger fans of Miss Marvel out there than me, but still. Excuse me. But yeah, we're going to get into this and hope for the best. So let's just get this started. When the screen fades black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow a link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades black and then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. This was really good. This was a strong first episode. Basically, this was the origin story episode, and it did its job well. It showcased Kamala as, well, herself, but also the start of her as Miss Marvel. It showcased kind of her passions, her dreams, her ideals, her goals, and gave her conflict as well. And speaking of conflict, I kind of wonder, will there be an actual villain? Because I haven't heard anything about villains for this series. Like with other shows like Moon Knight, I knew that Ethan Hawke was going to be in it and everything. And there was a lot more, I guess, that I knew going in with some of these other shows than with this. I guess maybe because I stayed away from spoilers a little more with this series than with others, but still. I don't know if there's actually going to be a villain. Don't tell me if there is. I want to find out naturally now. There's a lot in this episode that I connected with on a personal level. And I think that really endeared me to Kamala's character and just a lot of this story in general. I grew up in a household with parents who are a bit overbearing like that. And the idea was, yeah, they're doing it because they love you and they want what's best for you. But the problem, like I said in the reaction, is that there is not a single other person on earth, whether they're your parents or not, that knows what's best for you. The only person who can know what's best for you is you. It doesn't matter if they're your parents, your grandparents, your teachers. Not a single other person besides yourself knows what is best for you. And I feel like a lot of people still need to learn that. You can't and shouldn't try to control people's lives, especially family. A lot of times it often causes strain between family members when you do that. If you try to force like your children to just adhere to your ideals and stuff, to be little puppets for yourself, all it's going to do in the end is cause a strained relationship. And I'm speaking from experience. I don't have the best relationship with my parents because of this shit. And I still live with my father, but that's mostly out of no other real options. Believe me, I tried to get out of here. But it's just, there's issues here with how a lot of parents think they should raise their children. And luckily, that seems to be becoming less common nowadays. Like a lot of things that are very outdated. A lot of things are starting to really shift in how things are seen, how parents treat their children and all. Things are starting to shift. A lot more people are seeing how they were raised as was wrong and just not okay. And it's starting to get better in that regard. And on top of that, we see Kamala in this also having another thing that I can very much relate to, is growing up very nerdy, very fangirly, and just having parents who don't and won't understand. And like with Kamala, it was definitely one parent more than the other. For me, it was actually more of my father growing up. Nowadays, it's kind of switched. Nowadays, my mother is less understanding about it. But back in the days when I was growing up, like when I was around her age, it definitely was kind of in that realm. And it was hard to grow up and be into pretty much anything, because it's like I would constantly hear shit from my parents about it. And they very much tried to lead me in the direction they wanted me to go in life. And in a lot of ways, it destroyed parts of my life. They did a lot of damage to me that just really hurt me growing up. And really caused me a lot of issues in how I grew up. And that's the problem. When you try to control your children's lives to too high of an extent, you can cause real damage. And it'll keep them from being able to grow up as properly as they need to. Kids need to experiment with stuff. Even stuff that could be seen as dangerous or a problem. Kids need to be able to discover things on their own. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with having some rules in place. There's nothing wrong with having some restrictions and everything. But you have to realize kids are going to rebel. And they should. It's a healthy part of growing up. And you need to let them discover themselves on their level, in their ways. If you try to control too much, it's going to stunt their growth. Not physically, but emotionally. And again, it's going to damage your relationship with them. And it's not even just from my experience. I've heard plenty of people talk about this. How their relationships with their parents have been hurt because of this very thing. And it's just like, even the stuff in school with Kamala, with her not doing too well, being bullied and stuff, and having people look at her like a freak. Again, things I can relate to, things I've been there. It's just, it's very, not only realistic, but it's something I personally, as a viewer here, can directly connect to, and that I think is important, and I think a lot of people can, not just myself. A lot of people go through shit like this, and I think that's important to showcase. And it's not showcasing, and I like this, it's not showcasing the parents as being like bad. It's not showing them as being like extremely bad or anything. It's just showing them as being like kind of out of touch, I guess you could say. They don't exactly, they're trying to do what they think is best, and they're trying to show love towards their daughter. Like, you even see, they try to give her concession. They try to allow her to go to this convention. They just, the way they do it is not great. And that's, I think, the big thing there, is that they're trying to be loving, good parents, but they're just not doing it right. They're trying to do, again, they're trying to control their daughter's life too much, and it's causing problems. Even if that's not their intent, that's what's going on. Now, obviously, there are certain things in this that I can't relate to. The Pakistani stuff, I'm white. I don't know about Pakistani stuff. I don't understand that. I'm not going to unless I look into it and do my research and everything about that. It's not going to connect with me. And I'm not saying that as a flaw for the series or anything. It's just I don't understand it. That's more a flaw with me. And I try to learn stuff about other cultures and religions and whatnot. And I've learned some things for sure, but I haven't learned everything. And again, that's a me problem, not a problem with the show. I think the show is handling excellently, and the fact that they're putting that in there, the fact that they're keeping that as part of who Kamala Khan is important. We need to have more great representation for Middle Eastern people like this. Because for so long, especially after 9/11, all Middle Eastern people have just been demonized. And it's still happening. We have people, Middle Eastern people, in our government who are being demonized just for being Middle Eastern. Not because of their policies or anything, just because of being Middle Eastern, which is just super fucking racist and xenophobic. It's extremely bad. So seeing this positive representation and seeing it taken seriously like this is great. It's fantastic to see. I really enjoy that. So the general plot for this episode was really simple, but it was exactly what it needed to be. Kamala wants to go to this convention. She's a massive Avengers nerd, and she wants to go to this convention, enter this this Captain Marvel cosplay contest, and she just wants to have fun. Her parents are more restrictive and not letting her, at least not without certain conditions, so she plots with her best friend to go anyway. And they do. They make it there, and it looks like a blast. It really does. But while there, after putting on the bracelet that was sent to her by her grandma, I think? I might be wrong about that. But it gives her her powers, which is also, again, very different than how the comics did it, because she got her powers from the incident and everything. Again, I can't think of what it's called off the top of my head. But it's a different way of acquiring her powers and all. And the powers themselves being different. But we see that her powers start kind of activating, and she's not really able to control them at first. And she ends up causing quite a bit of destruction. Completely on accident, mind you, but still. So, yeah, it's pretty wild, and things don't go exactly well. Everything just kind of falls apart, so they have to head it back. They end up getting back a lot later than planned, and Kamala is confronted by her mother. And it's very much the stereotypical walk in, and she's just sitting there on the chair, like, where have you been? It's very much that energy, and it's like, oh my god. It's kind of old school in a way. Kind of this old school energy and everything. It's fun. But it's like, I completely knew that was going to happen too. It's like, yeah, that was very much going to be the case. But then, while she's confronting Kamala, it's like she almost kind of guilts her. Like, you notice that, like, she was guilting her. And I don't necessarily think it was, like, this intentional thing where she was, like, trying to manipulate her or anything with guilt. But that's very much what she was doing. And it's just, I'm not a fan of that at all. Guilt tripping your children with stuff like that, saying, like, oh, I thought we raised you better, and it's like, this is my fault, and everything. And shit like that is just like, fuck off with that shit. Just fuck off with it. It's never okay. But that's just, it's just how things are sometimes. Luckily, Kamala does have a good best friend who is there for her and supportive of her and sees her value for who she actually is, rather than who he wants her to be. And the father's not as bad as the mother here. He just seems to be kind of like a pushover. Honestly, he's not fighting back. He clearly doesn't feel as strongly about it as the mother, but he kind of just goes along with whatever she says and everything. There's only one part where he actually argued with what she was saying, and that was like when they were just sitting there. It's like, she's like, I don't trust you. It's like, she doesn't mean that. It's, we trust you. And she's like, no, I don't. And it's like, yes, she does. And that's like the only part where he was actually going against what she was saying. But yeah, this didn't really set up a lot other than just getting to know the characters and Kamala's powers and her fanaticism and everything, and I think it did it well. But there's still a lot of questions as to where this series is going to go. Now, I know Kamala Khan is going to be in the Marvels movie, which is a sequel to Captain Marvel, but also is going to, feature Miss Marvel, and then Monica Rambeau as well. So I know Kamala's going to be in there. So I assume this is going to be setting up for that. I wonder if we're going to actually see any cameos in this. Whether from Brie Larson or anyone else. That would be interesting. But I'm very excited to see what the future of this yields. It's looking pretty damn good just from this first episode. So, tell me in the comments below, what did you think of episode 1 of Miss Marvel, the newest MCU Disney Plus series? Let me know down below, and obviously if you know anything from the future, like if you know like future titles for episodes or anything, or if there's synopsises out there, please, no spoilers, just to be safe. And yeah, I thank you once again all for tuning in, and for now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.